Kauma Toru, Pipiri 2021. That's the 13th of July. Oh, Pipiri is June. Anyway. I am going to ask our Chief Executive to open our meeting with a karakia.
Meeting o taka, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia makina kina ki uta, kia makina kina ki tai. E hi aki ane atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, haumi e, hui e, tai.
Councillors, just a note if there are any items on our agenda for which you have an interest, if you could declare that there is only one item, so if you have an interest in this item, please declare that up front. We have no apologies today. And just a housekeeping matter, we have got item 4.1.1, which is additional information, and it is the Oruku Landing risk and audit chair comments and recommendations. So they have been provided to us in addition to the information that we've received on the printed agenda. I do believe there are some printed copies around as well. And councillors, we do also on our tables have a slightly amended, if somebody's going to be moving recommendation A, there is an amended version of that. So we are here for the item 4.1, the Oruku Landing Conference and Event Centre project. And there are two recommendations in this either or. And Councillor Benny has got his finger up. Councillor Benny.
I would like to move recommendation A, number 5 amended. Would you like me to read it? Or
I think it would be good if you could, please.
Okay, so this is 4.1, recommendation A, number 5 amended, that the Whangarei District Council either, 1, agrees...
No, I'll take it out for either. Sorry, either. Just take out either. So does the District Council...
Yes. Oh, right.
One.
Okay, you don't need them. Right. Sorry, I think it was really clear. 1. Agrees to progress to the next stage of the project by procuring professional services, including a lead designer for the project to undertake investigations and design work to move to the preliminary developed design stage to better understand potential costs. 2. Approves a budget of up to $1 million of unbudgeted operational expenditure in the 2021-22 financial year to progress the project. 3. Undertakes a special consultative process and or a council long-term plan 2021-2031 amendment for the project. 4. Notes the potential increase in Whangarei District Council project funding requirement from $23 to $57.2 million. 5. Notes that funding the ongoing cost to council of the project based on current project scope, cost estimates and available funding solely via rates could result in a district-wide general rates increase of 5.5% or general rates rises of an average of approximately 22.3% if sourced solely from commercial ratepayers should they be identified as the major beneficiaries of the project, unless alternative funding sources are identified and all costs allocated to other activities in the 2021-31 long-term plan are reduced. 6. Confirms the process and timeframes for the special consultative process and or a council long-term plan 2021-2031 amendment before the end of August 2021.
Do we have a seconder for those recommendations? Councillor Ellis. Councillor Benny.
So, excuse me for not standing. Tomorrow, the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Cockerell and Councillor Peters will attend the Local Government Conference in Blenheim. They will be in the purpose-built conference and event centre completed in 2017. Blenheim has a population of 28,800. A short while ago, I drove through Te Araha, past their new event centre. Te Araha has a population of 4,670. I move recommendation A so that we as a council, so that we as a region can investigate further the potential costs, the benefits, if any, the infrastructure required for the project and all other considerations. We have received numerous reports of the economic stimulus this will provide. In moving this, I am mindful of the possibility that this will lead to an unprecedented investment in a hotel. It is clear that we as a district need a hotel. I don't think that is disputed. The last term of government, this region was missed out hugely on PGF funding. We now have the opportunity to use $60 million of government funding to put towards a conference and event centre. If we fail to investigate this further, we fail our ratepayers. I move this recommendation, the undertaking that we progress to the next stage.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Open for debate. Oh, crikey, I'll put the motion if you're not keeping it. Councillor Connor.
I'll be brief. I see the need for the event centre. I see the need for a hotel. At the moment, I also see the need to be watching where we're spending our money. With the fact that COVID has just hit us, and I agree that this is a COVID relief type of area, people are still hurting. People are still trying to acquire infrastructure at whatever price they can. The costs are only going up at the moment. The situation is still volatile. The situation is still unresolved. Right now, we've still got an area where we're uncertain about what's happening. Eventually, COVID will be one of those issues that will be behind us, will be relatively flatlined, and it will be a normal day for us. But right now, this thing here is coming along and is going to impact us. Is going to impact the businesses, is going to impact the residents in many different ways. Now, with the 22.3% potential opportunity into the commercial ratepayers, I see small businesses being hit hard on that. That's not necessarily to say that it's going to be going with that one, but also the 5.5% on top of the 7% we've just put up. There's another impact on people that are already not able to pay what they can. Whilst I also agree that central government has a huge part to play, especially in the spaces of where funding and things come from, and also looking after people in their situations. Right now, recently, we've had an issue where homeless people are been one of those highest hit, and people are now, we've had a...
Sorry, point of order. Councillor Connor inferred that the rates will be going up 5.5% when we still is listed there it could. It's not a will, it's a could. So there's no guarantee of the 5.5%.
I think Councillor Connor has been speaking about the amount of potential rates increase that is in the recommendation. I think it's perfectly appropriate for him to use that number.
Thank you. But in saying that, on top of that too, we have also had a question asked earlier where how much rate increase would it cost if we actually went to pay off the debt as well? From that, it was 7.2%. And that's if we actually take into account paying off the debt as well, which is what we've heard, and it was able to be brought up. Right now, government's put in $60 million into this through CIP, come from our taxes. We potentially will be putting in $23 million with any cost overruns as well, which comes from our rates. NRC is putting in $6 million, which is also coming from our rates. Personally, the fact that there's no other money coming from anywhere else, from somebody who can create a great idea and bring it out and say, here, you do this. Well, why can't we do that with waste minimization and recycling and those type of areas? Something we actually need as well. Getting back to the basics is one of the main things that we had with COVID. With this long-term plan that came out, we had the vision of an inclusive, resilient, and sustainable district. This potential facility, a whole lot, and I'm not saying each one of them, is in a space which could potentially be a risk. I agree that there has been measures taken to be able to put that to a much less risk, but it is still a potential risk. The impact on Riverside Drive has already been an issue in the past. Impacting on Pungham Grove as well will be another issue that will be coming up. With people, as we can just see with the circus and all those other areas happening down on William Fraser Memorial Park, we've had people parking all over berms and all over the curbs and whatnot. People will be parking up Pungham Grove, which is already a small street, which is already will be impacted, which will be more if this goes ahead with this type of area. You can already see that as well with the other event centers we have, with everybody parking on all the berms, which I'm not supportive of either. Personally, I would like to see the $60 million that was coming from that in going into the homeless area, going into the central government actually looking out for people where they need to be doing. Whilst I also love going to events and I love seeing these type of things here, I would love to see something like Matakana, where you actually got a nice, humble interesting type of an area that actually embraces things too. It doesn't need to be big and flashy. I don't need big and flashy. I need something that will actually be enjoyable. I also agree that there is many different parts to play. I don't say everybody is this particular way, but I don't need a big and flashy thing. The last point I want to make is I do not want to see any more pohutukawa trees removed from Riverside Drive. Within reason, if they have to, due to the fact that there's a hazard or whatnot that maybe have to, I can understand that. But I do not want to see any more of these large established pohutukawa trees removed from Riverside Drive due to the fact that we've already had a huge uproar about the ones from the car park to park. I'm not supportive of going ahead with this. I see the need for it. I'm on the knife edge of this. I'm teeing her away. I want it. I don't want it. But right now, the people that I've been in my circles that I've been seeing, 90% of the people said they don't want a rate rise on this particular issue, and 10% said yes. And another forum, 50% said yes, 50% said no. So right now, I have to say, unfortunately, no.
Any further debate? Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I guess for me, today is it's a very interesting day. It's a big decision that we are making and trying to come to grips with. I do think that the paper that was supplied to us by the Chairman of the Risk and Audit Committee is very helpful, and that it has a framework towards decision making. And the basis of that framework is that you start at the top and you follow on a logical decision how you would go about making this decision. And the reality is that as a council we have adopted a vision for this city, we've adopted a city precinct plan, we've adopted a waterfront plan. This project fits into those plans, and what we hope when we put those plans out is that the city will provide a blueprint and a path for people who want to invest in our city, and it shows a clear direction of how we want to go. So this project fits right into that. The council had land that it sold which was designated for a hotel. That's there, it's out in the open, it's public knowledge. So then we come up and someone actually takes us up on our offer. Not only that, they attract $60 million from outside the area, which, as Councillor Connor rightly points out, is being paid by our taxes. Although, of course, if the $60 million doesn't come to us, then we will still pay our taxes and it will go somewhere else. Councillor Ben has pointed out that as a district we did not do well in attracting money from the Provincial Growth Fund. And if we do not take the $60 million, we will not be at our per head of population, we will be behind in what we should have received. That doesn't mean that we get blinded by the $60 million, far from it. And I think people have put forward the argument that the $60 million is something that is somehow blinding us to reality. All that Councillor Ben is proposing today in his motion is that we undertake further development, we undertake the process further and look at the investigations so to get a clear picture of what we're trying to achieve. At the moment, if we decide to not vote for the recommendation as put by Councillor Benning, then the alternative is to can the operation. If we do that, we are making a decision without having gone through the process. There's a vision, it fits into the vision, it provides economic stimulus, it brings with it a far greater chance of a hotel than any other project that's been put towards us. And overall, we're looking at about $200 million to be spent in the economy in our district, and the jobs and benefits that go with that. The other thing that is discussed in our agenda is some alternative sites. yet we have not had the information to marry up and compare the two options. Partly that's because of the time constraint that we're under. So what we really have is an opportunity here and now to secure $60 million of outside funding for our town, and an opportunity to investigate further, to make a decision, as Councillor Benny said, that our ratepayers deserve, to do the due diligence. We make a decision today, we won't have the information, and it would have to be said it is based on emotion and sort of gut feeling, and I'm not prepared to do that, so I support the recommendation as put by Councillor Benny.
Councillor Cooper? Any further discussion?
Can I just ask a question?
Councillor Meakin?
Thank you. In the sales and purchase agreement, there are a couple of issues that I'd like to raise. One is a question around the commitment by the vendor to build a hotel. Just a question for staff there. Will the commitment to build a hotel remain in the sales and purchase agreement? I mean, my question is around the fact that obviously the two need to be constructed as a package. It's a chicken and the egg. So I just have a question about whether, I mean, I know we don't have any, we've had indications that a hotel will be built. We haven't got any certainty. Is there any clarification on that point?
Yes, the sale and purchase agreement will not have a requirement that they build a hotel.
Because I understand in the original agreement that was part of the
Part of the land package.
that was part of the land package. So my question is, why would we remove that?
Yes, what changed?
That is part of their negotiation with the parcel of land. This is NDC requested that they not be tied to having to build a hotel on that site. They will continue to try and achieve that, but they don't want that as a fixed requirement.
A question? Councillor Cockburn?
Follow-on question for that. Can Simon please confirm, or can the staff please confirm, that the resource consent that's been applied for covers for both the hotel and the conference centre?
That is correct. The resource consent applied for through the fast track process includes the convention centre and also the hotel and apartments.
So, follow-on question from that is, if the resource consent fast track process goes through, will that then allow a hotel to be constructed and no other things that need to be held up to it?
That will allow the construction of a hotel as long as it complies with consent and consent conditions.
Councillor Benny, question?
So, on Councillor Murphy's point, is it fair to say that the negotiations you had regarding the development of a hotel, it would be very unlikely for any developer to guarantee a hotel on that property in the current environment? And is that the reason that we're taking it out?
You're quite correct in that it's a challenge to be able to guarantee something like that unless you are indeed building it yourself. If you're working with a third party to construct a hotel, then without a fully signed agreement,
Councillor Connor?
At what stage are the plans along with this because of the costings? At what time will we, where are we at the moment? What do we actually have in regards to that the public can know?
in regard to the hotel.
So how much it's going to cost? So eventually, with the current situation with COVID, with prices escalating and trying to actually procure these items, where is the costings and what is the potential
The current cost estimate for the CEC is outlined in the paper. So it's 23.2 million. That includes all the other elements of that project, such as the ferry, bridge, the infrastructure improvements, Plymouth Road.
With the current climate in the range of financial, would that then likely be to go up at any stage?
As you can tell by the agenda, it's calculated, or the cost estimate is calculated on preliminary work, it's concept design at this stage. And within the Becker report, you'll see the percentages plus or minus in each one of those elements, depending on how well developed it is. So it is, it will vary from that figure. That is the best figure that we can provide you at this point in time.
Councillor Cutforth.
Thank you, Worship. I'll just refer people back to this report and start by reading, for the benefit of people aren't here, something from page 2 under background, where it says the project has taken a complicated course over a protracted period, with the CEC component potentially transferring from a private development to a council-led development. And then on 5.1, where it says, during the last 3 years, the Oruku Landing project has morphed from a private development requiring only general support for the project to the conference and event centre potentially becoming a council-led project with substantial ratepayer investment. And I think we have seen this project morph from what was initially a request really from the developers for $10 million towards developing theatre component. So I've got words here like event centre, conference centre, theatre and entertainment complex. So it's been through a range of iterations over the last year or so. Primarily, it feels often to do with the potential for funding stream that's available. And the story sort of changes a bit in terms of the need depending on what the funding avenue is. I recall with the Hundertwasser that we were told that if we got the Hundertwasser, a hotel would follow. And I think we all accepted that that was likely if the Hundertwasser went ahead. Now we're being told that we, council, not a private developer, but council, ratepayers, are having to provide a conference and event centre, which is the current iteration, which is then possibly likely to encourage the development of a hotel. So I think our ratepayers can be understandably a bit unclear about the benefits of what's being proposed and be rightfully concerned about the amount of money that they are being asked to put into effectively what's something that started out as a private venture. I have no doubt that a conference centre would be valuable for Whangarei, though I do point out that just because Blenheim has one and somebody else has one, somebody else has one, doesn't necessarily mean that we should have one too. In fact, you could argue perhaps that the market is already full of conference centres. And when you look at the work that's been done by Crowahorath, by Impact Economics, by a number of people who we've brought in and the developers have brought in, the main comments that have been made around the conference centre is that it will mainly attract conferences of about 170 people, and it's going to attract a regional audience. So because of this, I think there is a question about why would, I tend to agree with that, whether there's a need when you look at the other centres and facilities that we have here, whether there's therefore a need for another one, I'm not sure. But I think arguably, because of the location of Whangarei, you're not likely to get any larger conferences, primarily because we don't have decent air routes actually from Wellington to Whangarei, let alone places like Tauranga or Rotorua that have direct flights from both Wellington and Auckland, so have a better likelihood of attracting those sort of conferences. I have real doubts about the event centre component. I can see in some ways the possibility of a conference centre, but in terms of an event centre, I don't really see, and I haven't been convinced by any of the discussion, because it's not really around events, that this will add to, certainly it will add quantitatively to what we've got, but whether we actually need something like this for events, I'm not entirely convinced. What I see with the current recommendation is that we're being asked to put more of our money, more ratepayers' money, into looking at further work on this project, which I think we all inevitably know in the current environment is going to throw up more costs. And at some point down the track, I think we're going to have to come back and go, the cost of this project outweigh any potential benefits that we can really see, and who actually would benefit from this project anyway. I was really taken with a comment that came from our independent risk person, who asked us, if it was your money, what would you do? And I think it is my money, but I'm also representing other people whose money it is. And so if it's my money and their money, what would I do? And I just think that the risks outweigh any benefit. And I think, unlike Councillor Benny says, that we fail our ratepayers if we don't go further, I personally think we owe it to our ratepayers to stop at this point. So I will be voting against recommendation A.
Councillor Coffey. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. I note that Councillor Connor talked about homeless people and their needs. One of the needs for Whangarei is more housing, and you may say that building apartments down on Riverside, which will be for richer purchases, won't make an effect on the housing market, but it will. I've talked to a number of people of my age who are really keen to move into the centre of the city, and they would free up their homes in the suburbs by doing so for us to buy up, or various people to buy up, for serving people that can't get into homes. That's the first thing. The second thing is that for me, I think that a combined hotel and conference centre of the size being proposed will add to Whangarei. I hear from Councillor Hulse that this council has been trying to get a hotel off the ground for many long years. In fact, it has come to the top now through the extra incentive being offered by the central government of some contribution to that. So, for me, I think that on balance, unlike Councillor Cutford, I think that I think that this is a good opportunity for us. We can, in the course of the next few months, look at what costs could be reduced or what costs could be saved, or how else we could actually make this less of a burden on our ratepayers and residents. And yeah, I think it's a time to make a bold decision, and we just can't sit on the sidelines. The advantage of having apartments, I can put apartments in there too, apartments, conference centre and hotel to Whangarei. And we could argue that's the wrong site, all that sort of thing. Hello, this is what's on the table. So I will be voting for this proposal from Councillor Benny.
Councillor Golightly.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was fine until lunchtime, and which is usually right. And I think I want to thank our Risk and Audit Chair, John Isles, and for just sort of breaking things down for me. One thing that we've got in here, we've got pros and cons, and we've got all sorts of stuff sort of going on, and we've had all sorts of information. And, he's got in here, we've got words like it might, if, assume, we've got all of that. But one thing that stood out for me in his overview was that he has put, and that focusing on risk alone is often a risk in itself. And that really made me sort of see that everything is a risk, everything that we do and we say is a risk. And today with Councillor Benny's recommendation, what I believe that I am voting on today is to progress to the next stage. I am not voting on today to go out to my ratepayers and say, I'm sorry, but this is going to cost you 5.5%. I am not voting on that today. But for me, I will be voting on Gavin's recommendation. I am. I believe that we would be doing our ratepayers a disservice by not taking this to the next stage, by not going out for consultation. And that's my sway. And it wasn't there. It wasn't there half an hour ago, but so I will be voting for Councillor Benny's recommendation.
Councillor Innes?
Thank you, Your Worship. I second the motion that Councillor Benny moved. It's one that I see that it's the next step. It's logical. And I appreciate Councillor Cutforth. There is a lot of speculative information at the moment, and the next step, of course, is to provide us with a lot more certainty. And I think part of certainty is always bringing the community, consulting with the community, understanding the community. And I see that this motion that we have before us is doing both that.
Carry on, Councillor Innes.
It's incredibly rude. So it's giving us greater certainty about information. It's also looking at involvement of community and discussion. It's awkward. We have central government that is actually requiring certain time limits on us. So, as a council, this is a tough decision. When you're on the sideline, it might look easy, but when you're actually in the circle, it's difficult. So, information is key to this. I go back and I have a look and I pick up really on what Councillor Cooper mentioned. We do have growth. You know, if there is certainty, we have growth. And this growth is some of the highest in this country. We are a city. We are moving as a city. And as Councillor Peters mentioned, based on Councillor Holz's comments, we've been looking for a hotel. A hotel is critical. Like I can remember when Hamilton went through this stage, and they located a hotel down on the riverbanks. So it's one whereabouts, when I read the economic advisors, the Howarth report, they quite clearly state that an events centre, a conference centre, is a catalyst. It's a catalyst to look towards attracting a hotel. So it's really that economic development and the diversity that we require, economic diversity as a city, so that we're more resilient. I pick up Councillor Connop's comments, and really it's one, do we just stand still when we know we've got growth, or do we try and encourage greater resilience as a district? in terms of our economic base. Well, I'm going for the economic base and diversity. I'm not going to sit here with growth happening and not try and provide for greater economic development. We have $60 million that's been provided by central government, and this motion really is one that it takes us further. It takes us further in terms of information. I really appreciate the independent chair of Risk and Audit. He's provided a very good framework for us to go forward. We have a lot of reports in front of us. There's a pile of reports actually in front of us. But I found that the framework that the independent chair provided is a really good way to move forward. So what do? So we get information in terms of design in terms of the conference facility, and we know that Becca have indicated to us that there are potential savings. But when we have a look at the proposal in front of us, it's not just a conference facility. We're actually funding the infrastructure around the facility. And I wonder, in terms of looking at further information, a bridge, $20 million, and I have a look at the reasonable rationale behind a bridge, and it's for parking across the river, and I know that parking's an issue across the river at the moment. And then I have another look at it, and it's to get to CAFs across the river. So I would like to think that when we're looking at this further design work, we can actually get a stronger rationale on the reason for the bridge and also the ferry terminal. So when I have a look at the motion that we have in front of us, it's still incredibly speculative. It's speculative because notes 4 and notes 5, and it says up to, could be, and it's frightening. Everybody's frightened about rate increases. I know I'm frightened about them myself. But what we need is to actually get a better understanding, and we need to have a good discussion with the community. So I'm hopeful that those rate increases won't be as high once we've done further work on it. But when we've done the further work, we're going to be discussing that with the community as well. So, so that's really the discussion that I have, Your Worship. I think that the motion we have in front of us takes us a step forward, minimises risk, and puts it in a framework that we can manage. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. Speaking of rationale, 60 million is a great and tempting mistress. Most men and a lot of women are happier if we keep away from them. A lot of the arguments are for the bridge and going across the river to visit CAFs and whatever. And parking is the major issue that we have with the whole complex, as we've seen noted in the report, how much land it takes up. So the warning bells begin ringing. Are we building in the right place, or are we contemplating in the right place? I've travelled a fair amount of the country, and I've seen event centres in Rotorua, fantastic. Heaps of parking, right on the doorstep. Plenty of accommodation, and I'm talking the length of this building away. Hamilton, fantastic event centre. The accommodation, as we've heard, is all down by the river. The event centre is nowhere near the river. Now to the actual issues that I have, and all the information that I've been able to lay my hands on, I don't see a written contract promising a hotel. And until such time as I see that, I'm going to be on the back foot. The council and therefore their ratepayers, according to all this, are going to be accountable for any cost overruns, which I do not think is fair on our ratepayers for us to assume that. Proposed rate increases. They're not high enough to cover the interest cost of the money that we're sinking into this. I don't think that the figures are in here to cover the depreciation once the building is complete. And the return on the investment, therefore, for the council and its ratepayers is negative. I'm kind of struggling here to be positive. And the last thing is predictions of the use of the building fall short of my expectations for me to be confident in it. And it being a successful revenue gathering and place gathering for everyone concerned. The apartments that will be provided, people may well sell their houses and move in there, but there's only going to be a few apartments. We need an awful lot of homes. So that's the one little wee positive I got out of it. Thank you, Karen. So I honestly, and I hate to be negative to all those gathered here today, but I'm afraid I cannot continue with this, and it's costing us money every day we play with this thing and don't come up with a result. That's why we're voting against it.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Any further debate? Councillor Schindler.
Right, let's start off here. We've got, and thank you, Bishop, for allowing us to go through this discussion and earlier conversations about this. First of all, councillors, I want to remind the councillors what CIP is. Crown Infrastructure Partners. And I'll read a letter, or so it's a statement by a media release done on the 1st of April 2020, which says the government has tasked a group of industrial leaders to seek out infrastructure projects that are ready to start as soon as the construction industry returns to normal. And this is all about the economic impact of COVID-19. In previous council agendas or minutes, I have stated how our ratepayers are hurting. I have stated how when we put little projects in which have very little effect to them, they're hurting in their back pocket. This is a project, despite what some people have implied, of $60 million, which has been offered to Whangarei to reinvigorate, thank you, the district and the construction industry. You know, being on the project team up to this point with Councillor Benny and Councillor Martin, we've managed to see a lot of the costs refined and changed, but there's still many, many variables, loads of variables. And we go through the report, and you've seen the agenda there with all the differences between Makakata and NDC, the differences between them. And as we've gone through this process, those costs have slightly got better. Now we've had an investment so far of around about, I do say around about, 150,000. Around about. To get those costs finalised a little better. However, the agenda item is asking for us to commit $1 million so we can get a developed design done. This will finalise all of those little costs. And when I asked what would the percentage of the project be when it's been completed, you know, once we've spent this $1 million or $2 million, whichever the case may be from the CIP, if we go for the $1 million to start with, what will that money account for in our design process? And the comment was, it would take us up to about 80%. So we'd have an 80% accuracy over the pricing. I'm one of those frustrated people because since 2008, I've been helping out and run the Ballina Fashion Awards, or the Northern Fashion Awards. And every year of running those awards, the only venue that we've been able to play at is here at Forum North, which only holds 450 people. We tried the Equipped Church when they were allowed us to have shows there. We managed to get up to 900 people. There is nowhere in Whangarei to run a venue like that. Nowhere in Whangarei which actually can run a venue which is stated in this project of about 1,000 people. So when we talk about events, this is a local event which is run over the whole of Northland. It affects kids, it affects parents, it affects everyone who comes along and sees the show and is involved in the show. And I believe your worship's even attended some of those. So when we come to the need for Whangarei, we've got a construction industry which is needing the investment, which is those people who are working in our industry, or the construction industry, should I say, who are needing jobs. We are putting investment into that with the CIP. And then on top of that, we're allowing events to happen like the Fashion Awards, like conferences. We're actually able to start showing those events at these locations. It's been mentioned about a hotel, but as I raised before, we can't proceed down the hotel front without actually having a guarantee that the resource consent has actually processed, because that process alone will stall a hotel development. So it was smart for NDC to actually go through that and apply for it at the same time. First of all, I did not think that was a smart idea, but after going through and realising what they have to go through, it was a logical approach to happen. Item 4 and 5 on the agenda frustrates the hell out of me. Because it has so many ifs, buts and maybes. There's no guarantees. The original agenda, which was posted online, said would be a rates increase of 5.5. I'm glad now the agenda says could be, because it could be a lot less. It could be a lot less, but we won't know that until we actually go through this process. Potential increase on item 4 there. We don't know that. We're only guessing it and estimating it. Let us get through this design process and actually give us firm costs so we can actually make a proper statement out to the public and actually get them on side. Or turn around and say no. But we can't do that until we've done this. There was a lot of other things I wanted to cover off, but the other councillors have done that. So I'll sit down.
Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Bishop. With all due respect, Councillor Cocker, I am very happy that if we go out for consultation, items 4 and 5 are in there, because I am absolutely convinced that if we go to consultation, we need to put all the cards on the table. Council has been asked to make a risk assessment based on some quite insubstantial information under the restriction of a very tight time frame. It is very, very difficult to come up with decisions for our community based on ifs and maybes. My risk assessment could be swayed considerably if there was a definite hotel on the horizon
to run in tandem with a conference centre. Conference centre, it's difficult to see that being used by its target market, which in most of the reports is identified as being our local community. It's quite difficult to see. I mean, I guess we'll get beef and lamb and maybe horticultural conferences there, but I can't see that happening every day of the week. The conferences were expected to come nationally, but we're not going to get a huge influx of those, in my unprofessional estimate. We could get events there, but anecdotally we're hearing that our local community event organisers find difficulty even paying the costs of using Forum North, regardless of the fact that there is also a community benefit to local organisations. And I just cannot see that if that is expensive for our local people, that a project of this magnitude is going to be able to attract those events. You know, we've got the Seminoff Stadium, we've got Forum North, we will have the Hihiawa development, all good venues. And yet even those can be classed as being too expensive for our local organisations to use. So that, I had three main points over and above the obvious risks that we're trying to assess, and those were the likely financial beneficiaries, which initially will be the construction firms actually doing the building, I imagine. Then we're going to run into the problem that the hospitality section tell us of having great difficulty in finding people to actually run their hospitality events. So the other beneficiaries presumably will be the CBD retailers, hopefully. For them to benefit from a conference centre, event centre, there needs to be a very easy connection between, in my unprofessional opinion, between the event centre and the CBD. That makes it easy for people that are involved in a conference or an event to travel between. Without accommodation over there, is connected with the event centre though, I see that traffic going more from wherever they're accommodated on the fringes of the CBD, because I don't think there is any accommodation actually in the CBD, or very little. So the original thought of a conference centre was just an economic stimulus for our CBD. And I really struggle to see that happening. So the likely financial beneficiaries are quite difficult to quantify, in my view. The target market has been quoted in most of the reports as being our local community. So I think I've just put on the table my thoughts as to how the local community may or may not be able to use it. Funding source also is the local community. We have to face the fact that somebody has to pay by whatever means that is, whether it's a target rate, a general rate, a borrowing and then paying back type rate, a selling something. What, I'm not quite sure, because then we have to balance the loss of income from whatever's sold against it reducing the rates at this point in time. So that's another difficult point to assess. My third major concern is the comfort sometimes being expressed of the safety net of council's debt headroom being ample to finance this project. Well, that's true, it is. But I feel bound to recognise that there's headroom only thanks to the previous prudent stewardship of councils prior to this, ensuring that the future essential infrastructure and emergencies could be covered by debt if necessary. And that's what the headroom's intended for. generally a business person borrows for an asset that's going to produce. You don't generally, successful business people tend not to borrow for the niceties or the not necessaries. And in order to be available for future essential works for future generations, the debt incurred will need to be repaid intergenerationally, along with the accrued interest and without the comfort of today's safety net. In my view, that's a heavy intergenerational burden on our district ratepayers and residents. And I'm not sure, but I could be corrected if I'm wrong, in that the estimated possible rates are calculated on repaying the interest and not the capital, which would require a further increase. However, I'm sure a following speaker will correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deemy. Councillor Conklin, question?
A couple of questions. In regards to the Whangarei Boys High Hall that they're building, what capacity does that have, and have they expressed any interest in using it for other events around the area?
Water.
Oh no, that's a comparison.
I think that is a question that would be difficult for us to answer because it's not our project, but we could ascertain that in future, but I don't think it's something that anybody in the room today would be able to answer for you.
Right. Second question. With the fact that this is through one of these reports, I can't remember exactly which one, has highlighted the spreading of people through the CBD and whatnot too. Would the bylaw restricting cycling and scootering and whatnot through the CBD be taken away so that people could actually get around easier? And also, would the one-way door policy be removed?
Those are future decisions that we again wouldn't be able to discuss today, but those reviews could happen.
They would, in my mind, I'd see that they need to. And the $1 million, up to $1 million that we'll be looking at this potential, what could happen, where would that come from if this is to go ahead? And would that be another rates increase in itself?
I think that's been made quite clear in the agenda that it is unbudgeted and that every effort will be made to cover that cost within existing operating budgets, but there is a risk that we could be in an unbalanced budget position year end if we haven't been able to make those savings. So that is covered in the agenda.
I'm just noting this just so people can actually hear this who haven't been able to read the agenda.
Thank you.
Because this is online too. So.
Any further debate? Councillor Martin.
The reality is we're here to discuss this agenda and not all the other stuff. We're not grandstanding for future elections or anything. We have to deal with the facts. We had a working group that worked really, really well together, and we did go through a lot of things. But it was really difficult, and it's impossible for us to have the final decisions, the costs, the design, the consenting, and put everything in place so that we could have everything ready for this agenda. Now we have an option of, we've got 2 months and 2 weeks to do all of those things to finalise. With 1 million from us, 1 million hopefully out of the 60 million. So that's the situation that we're being offered. So we need to go through the actual what's in the agenda. Never mind all the hocus pocus. The first thing on page 8 is 150,000 for the operation of the bridge across there. Then there's the Becker report. Well, some of you around the table will remember the stick I got when it was moved that we do a peer review. Now, quite frankly, it would be prudent. It would not be prudent to go into a project of this magnitude without having a peer review done. And as it's turned out, everybody has agreed that it was in fact a good thing. And it's been most helpful for everybody. So, then the question comes up, would you put your own money into this? Well, maybe it's my Scots ancestors. I would try. And then we go to page 9, and we talk about the operational costs. We get down there. Here's this little thing in the comments. Impact on rates from year 3 would need to be assessed. Probably that's meant to be reassessed. And then we go down to the funding options. The LTP was adopted without any allowance for the inclusion of the Oruku Landing project. It is assumed that Council's estimated $57.2 million capital contribution to the project would be funded through additional debt. Then it says down the bottom of the page, any ratepayer funding for operational expenses assumed to be $4.7 million, as shown above, must be considered to be an additional to what is already included in the LTP.
Point of order, Your Worship. Does Councillor Martin intend to go through the whole agenda, or is he going to get...
Councillor Cooper, Councillor Martin is debating the issues. I think
I would like it.
Your point.
I would like it noted that that interruption was deliberate.
Councillor Martin, just carry on with that.
The LTP noting that Council could choose to reduce funding or for other initiatives to offset this, with potential impacts on level of service in those areas. I think that's significant. And then if you jump to number 11, you can see however we cut up the cake, based on that amount that we're looking at, is the same amount. Whether the commercial, whoever pays, is the same. And then we go further through this. Councillor Cooper will be really happy to see me folding over a lot of pages. The importance of car parking. I always wonder, and those who were here for the Hunter Vasa will be sick of hearing it, but how do people get to a place if there's no parking there? Why do supermarkets and shopping malls all over the country have thousands of car parks? So it's convenient for people to get there. And people with any sort of a disability, or even older, getting older like me, can get there comfortably. That is a major issue for me, and that's something that we definitely need to have sorted out. Then we have the size of the facility on page 151. And we look down there, and what have we got? There's only one that's bigger than our existing facilities. Only one. A lot of things. And the Boys High, they came in and gave their submission when they wanted to have 10 million allocated to them. In their submission, they said that they're going to have 1,200 at their place. They are going to actively campaign in the community to get as much outside use as they possibly can. So we have got a large venue, and it's well on the way to being finished. And then we move through to the alternative site assessment, something that hasn't really. And that is self-explanatory. And we move through to 172, self-explanatory again, that there's some major flaws in parking, keeps cropping up. So it's a really difficult decision to make, but I'll make it when the vote comes.
Councillor Murphy?
Yes, I just have a question first. I heard it raised that with the resource consent that we may be required to, the council may be required to pay for a multi-storey car park building in addition to the event centre. Could I just have staff respond to that?
Within the resource consent process, we wouldn't end up with a condition that requires council to build a multi-storey car park, but because the consent incorporates the entire site, it will require, or potentially require, as one of the conditions, that in actual fact that is resolved, parking is resolved on the site. So somebody would have to fund that, whether that be council, whether that be private developer, or partly, or whether that's a hotel that's involved with this. Somebody may have to indeed fund that as a component, may well be a condition.
Yes, there are some things I'd like to raise now, if that's okay. So I guess the first one is something that Councillor Innes raised about consultation. And it is awkward because we did just go out for thorough consultation to our long-term plan. And we asked a question about spaces for gathering. And what came back were some interesting comments from the community. So for Oruku, there were about 17% of the comments were in support, against 9%. For Hihiawa, about 30% of comments were in support, less than 1% against. And for a gathering space at Forum North, 4 was about 8% against 4%. So we have just had that conversation with the community about their preference. And there was very strong support. I think everybody who was here for the submissions process, and we listened to our community come and speak, what I really noted was an overwhelming support for Hihiawa. So that was cool. And also, of course, what we consulted on was that package, which seemed great at the time, and I think we were all happy to go ahead with that. So we had the package where CIP would put in 60, we'd put in 23, NRC were putting in 14, and if that had all been straightforward, that would have been great. But instead what we found is that the NRC reduced their contribution, and then of course we had the peer review, which identified a gap in funding that was required of $32 million, give or take. So it got, it's been a lot more complicated. I think, as has been said, we all agree that we want a great hotel. And when I talk to the community, what people keep saying to me is, yes, we need a hotel, we need a hotel. It's not really the event centre that they're, so tied up in. They recognise that Whangarei does need a hotel. For me, the questions that come to mind, because in the sales and purchase agreement, it would just make so much more sense, and I think Councillor Innes said something about this as well. If both were built at the same time, it would be so much more efficient. Imagine the cost savings. Like if you've got to hire one of those big cranes, if you've got to bring in all this machinery, imagine how much money you'd save if both were done simultaneously. But instead, and this is why I don't understand why you would, the vendor would remove that clause about the hotel being built. That makes me really nervous. And also there's the 6 years. There's the 6 years for the hotel to be built. Whereas, wouldn't it be great if there was a guarantee for both to be done at once? But there is, of course, we can't be sure of that. We just can't be sure. The other thing which we have to note is with the Civic Centre, the QS, the quantity surveying which was done for that, just the cost escalations, which of course we all know because of the times, because of COVID, this is just the reality of the situation. So it's really hard, and I want to say congratulations to NDS for putting all this work into it, for having a vision. It's fantastic. However, there's a couple of things in that sales and purchase agreement which make me very wary. One is, for example, that the public will have to lease the right to use part of that boardwalk on the loop. That we agree to use to...
Am I right in thinking that the sale and purchase agreement is still under negotiation and that it only applies to the bit of land underneath the proposed conference and event centre?
Councillor Cooper, Councillor Murphy is referring to information that is in our documents on the draft sale and purchase agreement, so they are in our agendas.
It's getting unfortunate.
Councillor Martin, thank you.
Yeah. What else did I want to raise? So I think the thing is that through this whole process, we all agree, sure, we want a hotel, we want a conference centre, but we're now, as Councillor Cutforth said, what started at 10 million is now increased to 57 million, and no cap can be set on that. So here we go out for consultation with our community based around a $57 million investment, but with no guarantee that that would be the limit, because within another, 1 to 2, 3 years, it could increase again. So it's very, very, very difficult to commit to this and take on responsibility for that cost overrun when we have no surety for the public. That's all at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Martin.
I have a question for the staff. Page 24, it says maturity percentage, where all of these items have got a 25% and 20% up and down, 50% more. How would we define that or more accurately when it's not going to be built for a couple of years? Because a 50% increase up is huge. How do we tighten that up?
The only way that you can tighten that up is to progress the design so that you know exactly what you've got. And ultimately it goes down to tendering the project and the tenders that you receive, and I suppose ultimately the construction cost. But probably to answer your question in relation to the percentages, those percentages are the way they are because of the level of information that we have.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, Bishop. And it's been interesting to listen to all the debate. So far there's a lot of reasons why we shouldn't do it instead of focus on how can we do it. So as a council, first off, it's always really good to have leaders with a vision, and we expect council to have a vision of what we want to do for this district. We all also know we're one of the growth councils in New Zealand. We're the 8th biggest council in New Zealand now, and we need to have a vision that's strong and accommodate growth. Part of growth is social infrastructure. This is exactly what this project is. And it's being subsidised over 50% by the government. We've never had a deal like that before. Never. A previous council went out some time ago and said we wanted to have sports fields, the best sports fields in the region that are the best and comparable to any other in New Zealand. We've achieved that, and we're the leading region in sports. We now host international cricket, gymnastics, athletics, rugby, and hockey. So we've achieved that. That is part of the social infrastructure that people move to the district to take part of. That is part of what we do as the fabric of society. When you look at go back to the past council, we had a vision that we're going to free up the roadway, so we spent a lot of money to do that. To get money, we actually swapped some assets to build new assets, to build the town basin buildings. The mayor of the day and the council of the day sold the electricity department, put that money into construction all of the town basin and set the start of this whole scene. Another council sold off Cobham Oval to the warehouse, to locate the warehouse in the area where we wanted it to. We constructed a new sports field adjacent to Seminole Stadium into a sports hub. Really, really good vision. The other one's, another council sold off leases below Rivers Creek to actually fund a lot of development, Porry Ave, Tomato Porry, link across Porry Island. So we've been swapping existing assets and aged assets for new modern ones that we need going into the future. So this is about going into the future, not looking back. When you do it like that, it's easier to say, this is where we started from, this is where we are now, this is where we're going. If we stagnate and drop out now, we're not going to go have the momentum to keep going. It makes it extremely difficult. One of the pleasing things in all those points I just mentioned is we've got about the third lowest residential rates in the country. We do extremely well. We're one of the councils with very low debt level per capita. We are only half to our maximum debt load. So we run this council very efficiently, and we should be proud of it. So when we developed, part of the vision of council, past councils and this current one, was develop the precinct, and this was only done last year, a waterfront precinct plan. This is actually a briefing on the 16th of February 2021, pretty recent. And it's been out for public consultation. Our staff went over to the library and interviewed people, did a lot of work on it. And it says here, this area here is included in the waterfront precinct, the whole area we're talking about. We've had a discussion, and councillors, just go back and read it, it's quite interesting. It's a destination for all up here. Enhance the waterfront profile as a meeting place as well as a place to live, work and play. The waterfront offers a range of activities, amenities and diverse experience for all, including local visitors, all ages and abilities. Exactly what our vision was in 2006 would be modified our 2020 plan for the city. So this is 2006. And you might say, why are you showing that? Well, 2006 was well before the 100 Arthur debate. And here's a plan of our park just north of the 100 Arthur. Very much what we're doing. So we had the vision, and we continue the vision. If you lose sight of that and stagnate, what is the point of all this investment we've done over the past few years? This park alone is fantastic. It adds value to what we're doing. This conference centre, and it's a little theatre, modern, theatre, conference centre, entertainment area, that adds value to all the other ratepayers' investments. When I first got into council, we had 84,000 people in the district. We're now up to 100. Just about pushing the limits. But we're still trying to seek a hotel. I've been in discussion with at least 7 or 8 hotel chains that want to put hotels in Mongrove. We've expanded the zone out, as been mentioned today in this debate. The Riverside Drive one was sold with a caveat that a hotel would be developed on that site. We bought a property in Dean Street as where Armour Flats are as a possible hotel site, because we couldn't locate one in the CBD because there's additional costs involved in piling. So that's why we've got a range of options, range of sites. It's all been thought out, but the vision is to attract a high-class hotel as well. This is the only opportunity in tandem with another project where we can secure a hotel. If we don't go with this today, or go out for consultation with our public, and that's what we're doing basically, fix the prices, give some very firm direction in pricing, that will lead up to our next decision. Yes, I'm going to continue with it. We've got an indicative price of what could happen with the rates, but interesting, as I just mentioned, there's other ways of funding this as well. Thanks very much.
Councillor Alves. Councillor Reid, question?
Yes, Your Worship. Just if Councillor Hoss might be able to clarify this for me, the land and sites that we sold off to fund other things such as the development down at the town basin, namely the electricity department. I presume that is where that money went to, but I do know that New Plymouth kept their electricity department and it's turning over a considerable profit for
So your question is?
My question is, am I on the right track there? Was it, did we have to do that because we had no rates increases and we had to sell land to fund?
That's not really.
Very old question. You had your turn.
Councillor Cutforth, question?
Yeah, just a question really for our staff in terms of what Councillor Holst is saying in terms of getting a firm price for the development. How likely is it in this current environment that we'll be able to get a firm price? And what, I guess, what would be the implications of that if we were able to get one?
2 months.
A party needs to be able to cover themselves for risk. If you want somebody to build an event centre for you, firstly you need to be able to specify, make sure that they know exactly what you want, what quality you want, what maintenance you want to put on it. And then they can give you a price. But they will make sure that they put themselves for risk if it's a lump sum price with no escalation. So it can be achieved. However, whoever gives you the price will just make sure they pay. If you want to have a realistic price, then you need to develop the project, develop the design, and in my mind, you need to have some competitive tension in the way in which you bid it. That takes a reasonable amount of time to achieve. And the indicative programme in the back report gives you that kind of time frame.
Can I just follow that up with, do the staff feel that number one in this recommendation covers that likelihood in terms of getting a fair price on the project?
No, it'll get us further down the road of understanding exactly what the components are in terms of progressing the design concept to a better level for estimating. But it will still be a cost estimate provided. It won't be a big price in it, and the design will be far from completed.
Thank you.
Councillor Murphy, question?
It is, it's a question, just looking at staff time and capability. So when we look at a massive project, for example, the Civic Centre, we see a team of staff dedicated to that, and Alan has been the lead on that. With Oruku, so far we've seen our community development manager and our infrastructure manager dedicating a huge amount of staff time to this. So I'm just wondering, have we actually, to go forward to the next step, have we got the capability? Will we actually have to bring in, I know we're talking about procuring professional services, including a lead designer, but obviously we will need a team within council as well to carry this project forward. And so that means possibly other projects get deferred or put to the side, or will we need to actually employ or take on new staff or transfer staff over to this? What are your thoughts on that?
We need to complete the works identified in the long-term plan. In my belief is that we will have to bring in resources to undertake this, so we'll contract out all the project management, all the design, will all be contracted out. So there'll be some staff input into this, but by and large, we'll have to engage professional services externally.
So it would be different. So in this case with the Civic Centre, how we've seen our own staff kind of lead that. So it would be quite different, you're saying, it would be all external people.
We will continue to lead the project, but the majority of it will be done by consultants in a similar way.
Councillor Hopper, question?
Yes, through with the, I'm trying to make sure I get the wording right here. With the CIP commitment could our commitment to the project be seen with our $1 million that we're putting towards it?
Sorry, I'm not understanding the question.
Okay, so we have to show that we are committed to proceeding with the project to receive the 60 million. So what I'm saying is, would the $1 million that we're putting towards it, can that be seen as us showing commitment to proceed with the project as far as what we can do?
I would imagine that the recommendation A should proceed, that shows the commitment to go to the next steps of the project. We've got that before. And committing to funding for it, that commitment should proceed today. Councillor Bean, before you write a reply, everybody's been waiting with bated breath. So I have been listening to the debate with an open mind. I was sold on this project on the basis of a conference event centre, hotel, apartments, bridge, ferry terminal. It was a fabulous package, fabulous. And $60 million of external funding made it compelling. That was when we either had 10 million or 17.5, and it still kept on going up, and we consulted on 23. And it's continued to go up because we are in this environment where costs are escalating. We all know that. I also recall the drama when we went ahead with the Hundavasa Art Centre, and it pushed Hihiawa back. And they sort of had to wait their turn. If we proceed with this pushes the Forum North Lyric Theatre back. Every decision has a consequence. I've listened to the pros and cons. I've thought about the reputation if we go for it, and the reputation if we don't. These are all things that we're balancing. There are many unknowns. We don't know what the final project cost will be. And that's a position that none of us like to be in. We're in that situation with the Civic Centre, our own project, that we proceeded with it, but we actually don't yet know what the final cost will be because it's not complete. It's a horrible place to be in for our ratepayers. There's enthusiasm for this project from the community. We've all received emails that say, yes, go for it. We've also received emails that say, please don't. I can't afford it, and I don't actually want it. We've built this community up, and if people say if it doesn't proceed, we're going to be a backwater, well, that's not true, because we have done tremendous things for and on behalf of our community, based on, as you say, on plans, on future plans that we will continue to work toward. So we've got a potential risk if we don't proceed with this one. Where else could it go? We've got other options, but they don't come with a $60 million investment from the taxpayers. Thank you very much. That is really enticing. Let's not get it wrong. That is a really enticing bit of investment into our district. If we proceed with this today, we'll go out to consultation. We have the risk of consultation fatigue. We've just been through a long-term planning process, and we got feedback on the spaces, and we heard actually that if we analysed it clearly, the Lyric Theatre, Hihiawa won hands down, followed by Lyric Theatre, but there was still really good support for this project on our waterfront. Right back at the beginning, I fought with the proponents of the project to say, can't we just put it in a different place? Because imagine this in the centre of our city, but it is on the waterfront, which is a really enticing place to be. We want our waterfront, we've invested heavily into the waterfront. The rates increase is a real difficult one. That is a major con. And any additional asset that we build on behalf of our ratepayers comes with additional cost. We have in the past, it's been talked about before, we put infrastructure in and failed to put the operational budget in. I'm hoping that since we've been doing the prudent management, that we've made sure that we've covered off the operational cost of projects as they go along. We've probably undersold some, but that's our intent. We don't yet know the price of the land. We talk about attracting events. We hosted the Rugby World Cup in 2011. We've had the FIFA Under-19. We've had hockey. We've got Rugby World Cup next year. We've had cricket. We've had gymnastics. They've all managed to put those on with the accommodation that we have existing. It's not the flashiest, but it's survived. If we were just talking about a hotel today, it would be different. Because we all, I think, to a person, everybody says a hotel would be a real advantage to this community. And I agree. And we nearly got one on the hill, we nearly got one somewhere else, and there's talk about more interest, and there will be interest because one of us opens in December. It's a real shame that we don't have a hotel ready with lovely soft pillows for people to put their heads on when it opens. However, I'm sure the existing operators will be rubbing their hands with glee. So the benefits of this project, there will be employment. That's great. It does give certainty to the construction sector. We've had the Whangarei Boys High School being constructed. We've had the Hundabasa Arts Centre being constructed. The Civic Centre. There are cranes everywhere. The new ASB Bank. There are the refurbishment of the old ANZ Bank. It's great. It's really good, the investment that's happening in here. And I would love to think that we have another major project for our construction sector to look forward to. COVID came along and changed a lot of things. And the impacts that it's had on the uncertainty around where to from here. Will there be conferences? Of course there will. As Councillor Benny pointed out, we're off to a conference tomorrow in Blenheim. We're benefiting from the construction of a lyric theatre with a fly tower and a convention centre around it at the ripe old price of $23 million. Oh, I wish. Wouldn't that be great? Where am I? If this project proceeds, we hope for the hotel and apartments to carry on. I hope that the hotel is built as was on the wrap around the newspaper today, which I have to say did not inspire me. Sorry, team, but I have to say it's not our project, but I would hope that we could get something a little more inspiring. The project does align with all of our strategies and reports. It absolutely does. It's hand in glove. But so do other projects in those strategies and plans. So this is a very difficult decision for all of us today. Some people have indicated which way they will vote. Others are holding their fire. And it's a tricky one. I'm in a situation, I'm sitting here thinking, it could be 7-7, imagine. And if that happens, what happens? It just means that we are left with a non-decision, which is the last thing our staff want. They have been almost to a person been saying, for goodness sake, make a decision today. Part of my reticence in going with the recommendations, and I haven't made up my mind yet, but part of my reticence is it's not a decision today. This is not the day of making a decision. This is not the day to say the rates will go up by X or Y. This is a day to look at taking it to the next steps. Do we do that? Or do we not? Is today the day that we just go, no? I'll leave you with that. Councillor Benny?
Yeah, so it's really annoying going after when Councillor Holtz leaves his word to us, and then I follow you, and then I look at my right of reply and half the points are covered, so I'm not going to go over that. But the things I wrote down were vision and aligning to our strategies and our policies. And I think you covered that, so I won't go into that. A number of councillors have expressed their personal and quite rightly so, unprofessional views on a number of points, and rightly so. But to be fair, most of those questions are answered in the Howarth report of 9th of July 2021, which is a short while ago. And I suggest that there's a lot of answers in there. So, as you have quite rightly pointed out, I was run this morning by a young contractor. He's just started his own business. And he said to me, you have got to make this happen. He said, never underestimate the benefits to a guy like him that a project like this will come. He'd probably not work on this project, but the benefits, the offshoots of this project are huge for guys like him. That gives him certainty, and all the other work that we do, that the council does, that the community does, and continuing around this project. I just want to go through and you covered it quite well with your last point, and I just want to go over that again. Recommendation 1 says we agree to progress this to the next stage of the project by procuring professional services, including a lead designer, for the project to undertake investigations and design work to move to the preliminary design stage to better understand potential costs. Sorry to repeat that, but a lot of the councils have ifs and buts. This will answer a lot of those ifs and buts, probably not all of them, but it is a natural progression to take it to the next stage. Along with that, we go to community consultation, and we've done that, but this is specific consultation on this project, and we will get a really good response to that question. So I urge you just to take this. This isn't agreeing to the project. This is taking it to the next stage so we can get a firm indication of what the repercussions are.
The right of reply has been had. I will put the motion.
I'll call for the division.
Councillor Benny has called for division. Those in favour, please raise your hand.
Councillors Benny, Peters, Cooper, Golightly, Innes, Holtz and Cockerillo.
Those against?
Councillors Collett, Cutforth, Martin, Reid, Deeming.
And those abstaining?
No.
Did you vote?
This is a really big one. This is a really big one. So just what's that called when you ask?
Are we having discussion or voting?
Yeah. No, I can ask a question about meeting procedure. So for the meeting, I'd like to ask if the vote is 7-7, will a casting vote be used?
It's in standing orders that it can be, but there's no requirement for it to be used. But at this stage, you have abstained?
No, I can't abstain.
Councillor Murphy, your time to vote was when I asked for those in favour and those against, so that has passed, so I'll take that as an abstention. How's the vote? Is carried. Thank you, councillors, for your attendance today.